Hi Danielle. Who are you and what do you help academics with?
I will say that my dog's barking in the background. So if you hear that, just kind of listen through it. She'll stop soon. What do I help academics with? Let's see. Oh, and I think you're frozen. Anna, are you
Sorry, my internet just dropped.
okay? Okay. Okay. Hi, I'm Danielle De La Mare. And I have a company called Self Compassionate Professor, and I help academics with career wellness. I help them to feel like they're actually in control of their work rather than their work sort of controlling them.
Mhm.
And a big part of that is often helping them to make a decision about whether or not to leave academia. Many of the people I work with have hit a wall that's um, so hard, and they're suffering so much that they're really seriously considering leaving.
Right. Yeah, in my work with academics, researchers, I hear those stories kind of a lot as well, because I guess a lot of the stress academics face, if they're doing research, is from like having to write papers, um, and of course it's a tough job and it's a tough career, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess also most academics that you see around you that you hear of, they have a pretty full-on schedule. Um, so what I'm kind of wondering is it possible to have an academic career? So if someone is now like thinking about, okay, like is like one of those persons you just described, who is maybe thinking about, oh, is this for me? Is this really worth it? Um, but I'm thinking, is it possible to have an academic career where you don't have to work like nights and weekends and just feeling like you are busy and like stressed just all the time?
Mm. It is possible. I
Mhm.
I think that it's really hard,
Mhm.
but it's possible. And some people are just like, I am over it. I am done. I'm not doing this academic thing. It clearly doesn't work for me. I've tried
Mhm.
for a really
Mhm.
long time.
Mhm.
But if you really are committed to the work and you care about the work, and some of your like core values are connected to your research, for example,
Mhm.
then it's worth giving it a shot and seeing what you can do to find some wellness in your career. And so
Mhm.
often what it is that people have teaching, research, service, and all of those things are asking, they're being asked to do all of those things um in this way where they don't have like this nice way of transitioning from one task to the other task, right? So you're like,
Right.
okay, this is my Monday writing day. I'm going to write. And
Mhm.
then you take all of your sort of writing energy to
Mhm.
the next task. And then you can't get your writing sort of off your mind while you're trying to do the service work. And then you're just like
Mhm.
sort of longing to do your writing, but instead you're doing your service work.
Right.
And you're not doing your service work efficiently, and you don't really care about it, and it just feels like it's getting in the way. And so there are systems you can put in place to help you to transition from one
Mhm.
task to the other task.
Mhm.
Like wipe down your desk or,
Mhm.
spray some essential oil, but something that tells your brain that it's time to transition now.
Okay. Mhm.
And if you have like designated periods where you do this kind of work and then this kind of work and then this kind of work, that's really helpful. So it's about like
Right.
um, it's about orienting, because I
Mhm.
think that so often we're sort of swimming in this sea of chaos,
Mm.
and just kind of trying to keep our head above water rather
Mhm.
than saying, no, these are my priorities. This is what I need to get done. And this is how I need to sort of self manage to get myself through it in
Mhm.
the most enjoyable way possible, because you
Mhm.
don't want to hate your job, right?
No,
So
right.
a lot of my work is about making it better, making it feel better,
Mhm. Mhm.
bringing forth a feeling state that you can rest into,
Mhm.
where you can just actually really feel supported and soothed in your work.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I guess that's a long answer to your first question there.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, but you gave us so much already. Like, so you said it is possible to have a like fulfilling academic career where you don't feel stressed out. And I guess also an academic career where you can work within the hours you're paid to work for, more or less at least. And one of the things you said, and just to recap, was to be very clear about which tasks you're doing or which task you're doing at a certain amount of time, and kind of create an atmosphere for each task so your brain knows what's going on. And so you don't have all the things lingering in your head. I guess that's where stress comes from, isn't it? When you are like thinking about all the things you have to do. I guess also kind of being anxious about how they're going to work out,
Mhm,
anxious about when you're going to do them,
mhm.
like kind of worrying about not forgetting XYZ. And then I think, at least for myself, that's when I feel this like feeling of stress where I'm like, okay, I don't know, I'm overwhelmed. Like, I don't know when I can possibly get all of this done that I'm supposed to get done this week.
Mhm. I mean, one of my favorite things that my sort of mentor Martha Beck says is you can't hold the future and the present all at the same time, right? You can only hold the present. And so I don't know, that's one way to think about it. If you're always just trying to figure out how am I going to get this done? How am I going to get this done? And you're just projecting into the future constantly, it's like you're never
Mm,
present. And when you're not present, you have no energy. You're trying to hold things that are impossible to hold. You can't hold the
mm,
future.
mhm, mhm.
So if you can like reorient yourself on a regular basis, and I usually recommend 3 times a day at least, right?
Uh-huh.
Morning, afternoon, evening, reorient, come back to yourself, figure out what you need to do, figure out
Right.
what your priorities are, and then work on those and try to stay
Oh,
present with the task at hand.
the 3 times a day.
Yeah, at
Huh.
least.
Wow, okay. Wow. Um, I guess from personal experience, I think I struggle with being in a moment a little bit. Um, and I often think that at the end of the day, I'm kind of like in this like, I don't even know, like, did I get everything done? Oh, I feel like there's still things that are lingering. So I think there's like getting back to how did you call it? You're reorienting,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
right,
you're
right.
reorienting. I think, yeah, that could help. Is there like, how do you do that? If you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, often you can just ask yourself some simple questions in the morning, like,
Mhm,
what do I feel like doing today?
mhm,
Or what needs to be done today?
mhm,
And you that's the first conversation you have with yourself,
mhm,
right? Like, okay, now I know what needs to be done. Because if you just wake up and start going, you're doing this and you're doing this and you're doing this, and you have no real clear direction about
mhm,
how you're going to do
mhm,
everything.
mhm,
There's no path, right? So simple questions that you just ask yourself: what do I need to do?
mm,
What feels good to do, right? Because sometimes it's like I
mm,
need to do this, but
mm,
I don't want to do it at all. And
mhm,
that's okay. Like, listen to your body. If your body's like, this does not feel right now,
mhm,
it's okay to put that task off for the next day or for the next week,
mhm,
if it's possible, right? Like, if you
mhm,
really have a hard deadline, it's not. But,
mhm.
often in academia, we don't call them, we call them deadlines, but they're actually just guidelines. Like, let's
It's
be
true.
clear.
That's so true. I guess that's where people struggle. Like that's also sometimes challenging, right? To not have the deadlines, to not actually having to do something, but you could do it. And then things that are like urgent that pop into your inbox, these like requests, these like firefighting requests, then kind of it's easy that they take over.
Yeah, oh, isn't it? Isn't
Yeah.
it? And so, there are things like just the simple stuff that many of us do, shutting off our emails, don't have your
Mhm.
email on your phone, that kind of thing can
Mhm.
help. And just telling yourself, look, their emergency is not my emergency.
Yes,
So it's
yes.
constantly coming back to yourself. What do I need? And what's
Mhm.
best for me? And what's the
Mhm.
path I need to walk?
Hmm.
And if you really care about, for example, I just talked to somebody who's like, I love my students. I care so much about them. I want to be there for them. Okay, then that's a really important thing to know. And I'm going to make space, I'm going to carve out space for my students so that I can support them. So
Mhm.
I'm not
Mhm.
saying it's all about me all the time, but if that's a really strong value of yours, like supporting your students or whoever, being there for people in one way or another, then make that's coming from you, right?
Mhm.
This is
Mhm.
my value.
Mhm.
But make that space for them because you care about them.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't, yeah, I don't even know where I'm
Mhm.
going. What are we even talking
Mhm.
about now? I
I
feel
don't
like
know
I
either.
said,
um, I liked what you said about like that you should um like be aware about or be aware of what you want and need like first, right? As like the first step almost to figure that out. And I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, this thing with like fill your own cup first before you can pour from it. But it is true, isn't it?
it's so
It's so true. And I find, so I'm a bit of a people pleaser. So when someone knocks at my door, aka sends me this email with like a top priority mark and their emergency, I'm like, oh my God, like, and like I'm getting stressed, I'm getting anxiety. And I want to do anything to help them. And usually this emergency like involves me, or they make me feel like I made a mistake so that now I have to respond to that emergency, right? So I really like what you said, that their emergency is not my emergency. And I guess that many people can relate to that.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a lot of mind stuff that you have to work
Uh-huh.
through, right? Like
Uh-huh.
recognizing what your mind's telling you. If you have this really clear inner critic that's like you're going to fail and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, lose your job, or everybody's going to think you're a loser or whatever because
Mm-hmm.
you're not doing this one thing right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Just stop and ask yourself, is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Is that really true?
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the things I like to do. So, for example, like my big thought is always, I'm incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm incompetent. I'm incompetent. I'm incompetent. I tell myself that all the time, and it just it if I believe it and I act on it, I find myself in a really frenzied, overworked state. And so one of the things that I love, it comes from research and acceptance and commitment therapy, is to
Mm-hmm.
sing your main story that you tell yourself that tends to sabotage you, right? That story, I'm incompetent today. I'm incompetent today. I'm incompetent today. Because if you
Uh-huh.
sing your thought, that's what the research is showing, right? Like you can sing your thought, you can detach from it a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things you can do that that's really helpful to come back to yourself so that you can reorient.
Huh. Huh. I really like that. I've never heard about this approach. Yeah, it seems I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try that out.
You should. It's great. It's fun. Like laugh at yourself and you laugh at
Right. Yeah,
ridiculous shit.
because then it becomes ridiculous,
Yeah.
right? And then you kind of maybe it sinks and yeah, this was ridiculous. And I think it's almost a bit, it's similar probably to writing things down. Like what I started doing is having a journal and writing things down that go through my head. Um, in terms of what my worries are, like this whole thing about what you're grateful for also does seem to work for me. And what do I want to say? Oh yeah, another thing that works for me is to write down at the beginning of the day what I think is going to be difficult that day and come up with a solution
I love
for
it.
it. And that is like, I found this in a book called, um, sorry, I'm just blank. I'll add this to the blog post. It's a book written by someone who helps people with addiction. And it's a really nice book about habits. So even though I didn't use it to like to heal an addiction, I really liked to like work on how to like form habits, and how to be kind to, yeah, the kindness method. That's what it's called, the kindness method. Have
I
you heard
love
of
it.
it?
I haven't. I am. It sounds like it's reminding me because I'm a trained mindful self-compassion teacher,
Uh-huh.
and it and that's what it's all about. It's like showing compassion to yourself, showing kindness
Yes.
to yourself,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
feeling all the feelings in your body when you feel
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know, like you're being mean to yourself, or or
Right.
you're feeling suffering in some way. It doesn't just have to
Mm-hmm.
be about you, like
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but feeling those feelings, giving yourself some sort of physical gesture to show yourself compassion,
Mm-hmm.
telling yourself something compassionate. That's what it's making me think of. And then when you
Yeah.
say, like, to wake up in the morning and say, okay, what's the thing that's going to be difficult today, and how can I find a solution?
Mm-hmm.
um, that seems to be a dialogue that can sort of fluidly emerge from that self-kindness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of how I'm thinking about what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sorry, I was kind of going in many different directions. So the what's going to be difficult today thing really helps because it takes the like anxiety, like the spinning thoughts, like it kind of stops them, and you like sit back and reflect, and then you're like, and then you find a solution. And then once you have the solution, the thing isn't so difficult anymore. Like honestly, it's then easy because you can come up with solutions for things that are difficult. Just have to stop and think. I guess this is also what you do when you're like do the centering, what did you call it?
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
it's checking in with your body. What does my
Yeah.
body need?
Yeah.
That's one
Yeah.
of the questions you might ask in your orienting session.
Yeah. And I guess when you like sing stuff that's on your head or you write it down, I think the good thing about that is that it kind of comes out and it becomes almost like real, right? Because when it's in our head, it's just in our head, and then we put it down and then we see how ridiculous some of the things are
And we can
we
actually
spend.
then put it down, like we
Mm-hmm.
can put it down rather than it just
Mm-hmm.
circling in our head forever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do you want to talk a bit about like your own journey, like how you came to where you are now? Like now you help academics with feeling good in their careers, or maybe evaluating whether or not they want a career change. Why are you doing this at all?
Yeah. Um, so I think that I know this isn't true for everyone, but for many of us, we teach what we ourselves need to learn.
Mhm.
And so 100% there's a reason, right? I have turned my trauma into a purpose for sure.
Mhm.
Because when I was an academic, I hit a wall, and I felt terrible. It was right after so I was working really hard and really long hours. I had a baby,
Mhm.
second year into my tenure track job.
Mhm.
Um, and the only moment I felt like I got any rest was when I would show up at a coffee shop at like 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And I'd
Mhm.
have like from 6 to 7 a.m. where I could just be like, oh,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't stop working. I never stopped working. Even my husband said to me, "You are like carrying low grade anxiety with you wherever you go." He's like, "I never
Mhm.
interact with you when you are not anxious ever."
Huh.
And when he said that to me one day, we had a baby, and I'm trying to do this demanding job. And I'm like, oh my God, he's right. I
Mhm.
am. And so I tried different things. Like I did yoga. Yoga felt really good. That led me to meditation. So I learned how to meditate. I learned how to teach people meditation. And so
Ah, mhm.
I started bringing meditation into my classes. Like at the beginning of every single class, I would make my students meditate.
Mhm.
And and I said it was for them, and it was, but it was very much for me, even more
Uh-huh.
than them.
Uh-huh.
So that was helpful, but it was like every time I finished the meditation, it's like I was back in it again. And I couldn't, it was like these breaks, but it wasn't like long-term change from the meditation. And so
Mhm.
that led me to doing more digging, and I found mindful self-compassion. And then I realized self-compassion is sort of the missing piece for me, because I
Mhm.
never was creating any space for myself other
Mhm.
than in meditation. That was the only
Mhm.
space.
Mhm.
I couldn't like sit in a meeting and create space for myself. I would sit in a meeting and try to act like the good academic, and have my pen and taking notes and making good suggestions and doing the right thing, right? I was
Mhm.
always sort of performing, and there was never any space for me to just relax in the meeting. Like, it's okay
Mhm.
to relax in a meeting. Relax in a meeting. Yeah, I'm telling you this because this is what I needed to hear back then.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, and eventually, I got sick. I got a cancer diagnosis,
Oh.
and I just got hit so hard. I'm trying so hard to make this work, and I can't
Mhm.
figure out how to make it work. Like
Mhm.
yoga, meditation, it's working to some
Mhm.
extent. And now I got sick, and like, what the heck? And I just knew, and people might argue with this, but I just knew sort of intuitively that cancer diagnosis came from me never resting, never
Mhm.
relaxing, never figuring out a way to get out of anxiety.
Mm.
And it was at that time, before I knew like what I needed to do. Like, would I get surgery? Would I, like, what stage of cancer did I have? Like, before I knew any of the stuff, I just knew that I needed to start connecting to people more.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, so the first thing I did after getting the cancer diagnosis is I went to Starbucks. I didn't call anybody. I just went to Starbucks and I paid it forward. I bought coffee for me and the person behind me. And then I just had this intense need to connect to everybody. I wanted to call friends. I wanted to be with family, because I had been starved for relationships
Mhm.
for so long. And
Mhm.
that's when I realized that relationships was a key piece, right?
Mhm.
So being in supportive relationships was a key piece to my sense of burnout and my sense of anxiety. So you can have the mindfulness, you can have the meditation, you can have the calm moments, but you also need other people to love
Mhm.
you and support you.
Mhm.
And I know so many academics, including me, say, I don't need people because I don't have time. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
time to talk to my friend. I talked to her 3 months ago. I'm good. Um,
Right. Right.
no, you need the support and the love of other people, and you need to make space for yourself.
Huh.
So yeah, I guess that's my journey in a nutshell.
Mhm. 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 And then you decided to quit academia and transition to having your own business, I guess.
I did. It was kind of going to be like a 10-year plan.
Uh-huh.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave, but I can't do it right away. I'm in this job. And then my husband he got a job across the country. And so we moved back to Denver, where we were before, from Michigan.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I guess this is my chance. I'll go ahead and
Uh-huh.
start
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
my business. Before I started, though, I took a job as a visiting assistant professor.
Mhm.
Um, Visiting assistant professor, is that what it was called? Visiting teaching professor.
Okay. Mhm.
Visiting assistant teaching professor. I was in that job for a few months and I got sick again. Not
Wow.
cancer, but it was a serious autoimmune disease. And I was
Wow.
like, my body keeps telling me to stop it.
Yeah.
And so I was only there for a few months. I had to be like, I know I signed a year contract, but I'm out. I'm done. I can't do this
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
And I've been trying to do my business on the side. I was coaching people on the side. And so then I could just take full flight once I finally left that job.
Right, right. Huh.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your journey. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah, I guess I really like what you said about how important relationships are. And I totally agree with you. Or in my experience as well, many academics don't have, like, relationships aren't the priority, right? Like, it's family, like taking care of your children and your job most of the time. And that basically fills all the time that is available. And then there's like household chores and whatever one needs to do to be alive, a functioning human in our society. But yeah, I never really reflected on how important relationships are to friends, and I guess also relationships just in your community, right? Like, even if it's not like a super close friend, but just to have this kind of sense of that, like, there's a world out there I'm connected to. Actually, that makes me think of that many researchers are actually often also moving to other countries, right? Like for postdoc, or then they take a job in a totally new city. I mean, the US is huge already. Like, when you move across country, it's like a different country most of the time. So you may not know anyone there. Or in Europe, where I am, people often move between countries where the language is different, the culture is different, you don't know anyone. Like, this is hard. This is really, really hard. And then to have suddenly long distance relationships with your friends. So I think, yeah, this is a good reminder to really take this seriously, to build relationships and to maintain relationships for our own health and happiness.
Absolutely.
I know that you also talk a lot about burnout, and you help academics with preventing burning out, essentially. What do you think? Like, what would you say is, what's a sign that you are burned out? Like, if people would like start analyzing themselves a little bit, or that they maybe aren't, like, probably when you are in a burnout, but what's a signs that you are heading like towards that sort of point?
So I think about it, I use polyvagal theory to think about it, Stephen Porges's work, and he talks about these sort of three levels, where on the first level, you feel very connected to other people, you feel very connected to yourself, you're calm, you can hang out, like I said, in a meeting and feel like your needs are still being taken care of. You can position your body in a certain way because that feels right to you. You're connected to yourself and you're connected to other people. And then when your nervous system becomes overwhelmed, you fall into fight flight. And when the fight flight happens, right, obviously you're pushing really hard, you're doing everything you can to make it work, or you're running away from things so that you can create space over here. And the problem is that academics stay in that mode for too long, because ideally you're supposed to only go into fight flight for temporary things, right? So you
Right.
get through this one thing that's overwhelming you, and then you move back up to that connection place. But academics will stay here for years. And when they stay here too long, they fall into freeze. And freeze is how I see burnout. Freeze is when you cannot lift your head up so long enough to write an email, right? Like, it is a place where you can't function. You realize you just can't function. And I have Dr. Ozgun Unver was on the podcast, and she talks about burnout on my podcast, Self-Compassionate Professor. And she talks about burnout at her own sort of story. And she said she was literally just on her sofa, unable to move. She couldn't do anything. And the only reason she was able to even get medical care is because she had a friend come over to visit her and said, we got to do something about this. And this friend took her to a doctor. And that's when she finally started to get on the path toward better health. But the sign is you are incredibly unmotivated. You really don't know how to make anything work, and you feel frozen. And you know, you can have, everybody has different symptoms, but I think the primary one is that you just don't know how to function anymore.
And what we say is like a warning sign of that, like what's a sign that people could look out for when they're like in the stage 2 in the fight or flight mode? Like, or how long? I'm thinking like, so you say one can be in this mode for a while, and then one should to be healthy, go back up in the first level where you're connected and your needs are taken care of. But when does it become a problem to maybe be in the second stage, in the second mode?
Well, when you are starting to get physical sort of symptoms, for sure, right? You're starting to feel sick. You're starting to get sick all the time. I mean, that happened to me. I was getting colds all the time. I was getting the flu. Like, who gets the flu twice in a year? You know, like, what is that?
Right.
I was getting stomach aches. Your body's often telling you, you need to chill out. And we're like, oh no, but I can't, you know, and your brain just has this conversation with your body that's like, no, you need to step up and do the work and keep going. Listen to your body. That's where your wisdom is. Your body knows. And what is that? There's a quote about like something about, I don't know, I can't remember what it is, but it's something about like your body will stop you eventually. And that's what happened to me. And I really believe that's what my cancer diagnosis was. So if you find yourself getting sick, that's a good sign. Another thing I think is another symptom that I see often, and I saw with myself, was the forgetting things. Like I used to be this teacher who knew my students' names, and I could very easily call on them at any time. And suddenly I just stopped remembering their names. Like I would go to class and I couldn't call on them by name anymore. Such a weird thing. So if things like that are happening, that's another sort of sign.
It's interesting. I've had a friend of mine recently burned out. She isn't an academic, but what you were saying about the becoming ill thing was very much true for her as well. And it's interesting to think that that's actually this like physical illness. It's almost like a warning sign that our body sends us to like, okay, now you have to slow down. I often actually think I get headaches quite a lot. And sometimes I think, and this is a weird theory, and it's probably not true. But I have a feeling that sometimes my body gives me a headache so that I rest, so that the only thing I can do is lay in bed and not do anything. Yeah, that's my little theory. And I think, yeah, it's interesting to think that that's maybe is what's happening in burnout in people who are about to suffer from burnout as well.
And then we have the culture of academia telling us you don't slow down.
Right.
And then you have your own work addiction stuff that I guess I shouldn't say everybody has it, but most of us have it. That's telling you not to slow down. And you have to be in a really sort of strong place and connected to yourself, and clear about what your values are. I mean, I guess to come full circle, right? Be clear about what your values are. Be clear about what you actually need in your life. And you need to be able to talk back to the culture, and you need to be able to talk back to your inner critic that's telling you to keep pushing. And you need to say, no, I can't do this anymore. And I'm going to figure out a way to stop all the crazy, because it is crazy.
There's two things that you said that I find interesting, that I want to talk about if you have the time. The first one is work addiction. So you said almost all of us have it. And I always thought, I guess I didn't have it. And then recently I've come to the conclusion, especially during the pandemic, I guess I am a little bit addicted to work just because I find it very rewarding. And I mean, that's a luxury place to be in, I guess, because I'm my own boss. I get to do things that I find fun. I genuinely love my work. But also, I find it addictive and sometimes I find it hard to stop. Um, so I guess that's work addiction then, right? Like, how would you, if people were trying to self-diagnose themselves, like, what's a sign of that you're addicted to work?
I think the number one sign is what we were talking about earlier in terms of not being able to let the energy of work go, even when you're doing other things, right?
Right.
So you're with your kids or you're trying to clean the house and you can't do it because you're just thinking about work. And like every minute you get, you find a way to, open your email or look at this one thing one last time. Like if you can't let it go, that's a pretty good sign you've got some addiction going on.
And the second thing I would like to talk about is also academic culture, and especially like the structure and the system. And because I'm always a little hesitant to, I don't want to make people feel like, oh, this is your fault. Like you're not feeling good because you're doing it all wrong. Like, I guess what I'm always thinking is there is oftentimes when we find ourselves in situations that we have problems in that we find hard to deal with, there is of course a personal component where we could have done things better if we knew better, etc. But also there's like a whole structure that makes it really easy for us to get to that place. And I think academia, the way it's set up, is often contributing massively to why people are not feeling good with their work or are getting sick. Can you speak a bit about that? Like, are there any structural changes that you would like to see, or what exactly do you see as contributing to, especially in academia? Yeah, the bad work environment, I guess, in academia.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a culture of career wellness for sure. It's not like you go to your PhD advisor and you say something like, I'm just really having a hard time with this chapter. It's like my brain is not working. And generally a PhD advisor will say, well, push a little bit harder, get it done. That's what we need to do. We don't have a culture that allows us to say things like, okay, well, why don't you take a break and come back to it? And why don't you check in with me in a couple days and tell me how you're feeling? How are you feeling? Are you feeling burned out? Like those kinds of conversations need to happen. We need to have a culture that supports that kind of thing. So and like those two things, self-care and support of each other, right? Relationships. Like I guess there's one thing that comes up over and over and over and over again with academics, particularly those who are on the tenure track, and they say that they need to be able to talk to people about the struggles they're having at work, and there is no place for them to do that. They can go to faculty development centers and learn how to teach better and learn how to be a more productive researcher, but they need something deeper. They need to be able to connect on a deeper level about like what it is they actually are experiencing emotionally and psychologically. And a lot of them go to therapy to get that support. Right. But a lot of them also tell me that they would like to have that kind of support in their institutions and they don't have it. So what can we do to institutionally give faculty support? That's a big one.
And do you think there's any, like, if you could design the ideal university, what would you like to have in place there? How would you like they went about organizing academics work? Like, if you really could dream of like a like really, really good workplace that centers career wellness?
I don't know about the hows. Like, I don't know
Mhm,
what it exactly would look like, but
mhm,
it would facilitate transparency about how people are feeling.
mhm,
People would be able to very openly say, look, I'm burned out. Look, I'm
mhm,
overwhelmed. Look, I need a break,
mhm,
without feeling like they were, you know, getting, what am I looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? Without feeling like people are going to judge them or disrespect them or something
mhm,
for that.
mhm, mhm,
Um, they would be able to feel safe, I guess. That's what I'm
mhm,
looking for. They'd be
mhm,
able to feel
mhm,
safe and supported and be able to say what they need. Because this is the deal. If you say what you need now and you're bold enough to do that, I know it's scary,
mhm.
but what that does is it opens the door for other people to feel like they can say what they need.
Yeah.
And so doing that now, even before we have these sort of institutional structures to support that, um, is a really good idea. And you can support institutional change just by making those kinds of choices.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that's something really important to always remember, that I think if you feel this way, in 99% of the cases, it's not just you who feels that way. Like if you feel that way in this situation, then most likely someone else in your situation would feel exactly the same way. So it's not you, it's whatever is around is creating this response in you. Um, and I guess especially in academia, since I hear it so much, like I hear so much about the struggles academics, researchers have, um, that then are impacting how they feel, and then ultimately can cause something like burnout. Um, I just want to say that you're not alone. Like there's so many people who feel that way. So, um, yeah. um, okay. Is there anything else that I haven't asked that you would like to add or say? Anything
Let's
like that?
see. Do I have anything? Um, I do want to say one thing about listening to our bodies. Um, as academics, we like to be in our heads a lot. It's our
Mhm,
thing. It's what we're good at. But I would ask you to notice what your body feels like when you're doing particular tasks.
mhm,
So take what's the perceiving you're doing in your brain, in your head, and just like bring that down to your heart, bring that down to
mhm,
your chest. And as you're doing particular tasks, notice how you feel during those moments.
hmm,
And you can like break this, and I do this in my group coaching program where like I ask them to look at their teaching work and all the tasks involved in their teaching work, their research work, their service work, and break it down and rate it, give it a number.
mhm.
Right? Like I feel -10 when I'm doing this task and I'm
Right.
feeling +3 when I'm doing this task. But really notice what it feels like in your body so that you have a clear idea about what needs to be changed and what you can do more of, essentially.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
your body, please listen to your body. It's so important and we don't do it enough. I guess that's
mhm.
the final thing.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, I like that. I love I love scoring. Like I love putting feelings into like data points.
Of course, of course
Of course.
you have a PhD. This is what
I
we
I love rationalizing things. So I
do.
love this. I'm gonna start doing that. Because I already love, and maybe this is also something you recommend researchers to do. What I recommend, I mean, I'm not so focused on career, or I'm not focused on career wellness. I'm focused on helping researchers to write. But part of that is also how to write more efficiently, like time efficiently.
Mhm.
Um, and that ultimately creates a lot of stress, usually, this whole like writing, the whole pressure, like publish or perish, and like then the feelings that come up when you write and stuff that are often quite severe for people. And one thing then that I recommend is like a time study, like to write down throughout your day what you're working on and to see where like the time sucks are and how much context switching maybe you're doing, right? So that you're losing time. So this is, I think, one thing to do, like that's like a rationalization of the stress, and then combined, I think, with your scoring, okay, how am I feeling? Like, okay, this task maybe took me an hour and it makes me feel a -10. Maybe that's the cause then for why you've been feeling stressed all day.
Mhm.
I love that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
okay, Danielle.
I'm glad.
So if someone who's listening or reading this interview and they want to find out more about you or maybe work with you, can you tell us where can people find you and how can they work with you?
Yes, thank you for asking. So you can find me at selfcompassionateprofessor.com. You can check out my podcast, which is Self Compassionate Professor, and there is a decision guide on my website that's like, should I leave academia or not? I can't remember exactly what the title is, but if you want to check out sort of these questions that I ask you to get you to think about whether or not you should leave, if you're at that breaking point, go ahead and do that. And then you can also schedule a consult with me on my website as well. There's just a little thing to schedule. And I take people who are trying to feel better in their academic job or trying to decide whether or not they want to stay.
Okay.
So those are sort of my major categories of clients.
That sounds great. We'll definitely include a link to your guide and to your website and to the podcast as well. And I was actually on that podcast recently. So if you want to.
Such a fun conversation. Listen to it. It was really fun.
It was really fun. And I'm talking a little bit about my own journey, I guess. And we're just chatting career wellness, things like that. So thank you, Danielle. Thank you so much. Bye. Okay, stop.